Agenda review and disposition.
I have a few things to add under other business. A driver's ed contract and an employer request.
Thank you. Okay. Privilege of the floor. Do you have anyone that's good? Okay. Approval of the minutes November 9th. Anyone see anything? Yes, Phil.
So moved.
Seconded by Walter. All those in favor? Opposed, abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining, Maureen, okay. And then we'll, and then everybody got the non-public minutes of November 9th. Tim, you want to move those? Did you see any, anybody see any? I didn't see any.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, seconded by Bill. All those in favor? Opposed, abstaining? Maureen, abstaining, okay. And principal's report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I got a few things before I introduce some guests that I have brought with me. First piece, I reported out that the senior class had run that flag football tournament for one of their classmates. It exceeded expectations. They raised over $10,000. Good time had by all. The superintendent was there too. And it may become a regular senior event, but kudos to that senior class for taking that responsibility on, to Laurie DePost, the senior class advisor, and to the number of faculty who put their time and effort into making such a great day become very successful. I know the family was very appreciative of that. Last night I had the privilege of attending the holiday concert at Silver Arts Hall. It was a full house. Outstanding performance. Again, kudos to Mr. Gunn, who runs an outstanding program, both band and chorus, and it was well attended by all. The weather wasn't that great, but it was still well attended. The play went off unbelievable. There was a full house, the entire 3 performances, 4 really, and the performance of Shrek. Again, kudos to the theater department. I do have one note to mention that as we enter into the winter sports and we're indoors, if we are in a transition to a mask mandate due to a COVID outbreak or a cluster here at the school, our athletes on the floor participating in the game itself, they will not have a mask. But the fans and the kids who are on the bench waiting to go in, they will be masked up. That's just an informational point for you guys. So if we do go into a cluster of that piece. Moving on.
Only if they're inside.
Oh, yes, only if they're inside, obviously, not outside in Nordic or that piece. We have a presentation from Jeff Eckett, our counselor. I got a request from Plymouth University. I asked Jeff to take on this responsibility and to be the lead, and he has a short presentation to make tonight to the board. Jeff?
Hi, thank you. I'm Jeff Becker, one of the school counselors here. Yeah, we were approached by Plymouth State. It's really the TRIO organization. They run 8 different programs that help low-income families, first-generation college students, disabled students, helping them on the pathway to college and post-secondary education. And so they're still in the final grant approval phase. If this were to happen, it wouldn't be till next year. About this time, we could start implementing some of it. But we definitely wanted to get your buy-in with it before we committed to it. Even though it seems like a win-win to us, we just kind of wanted to open it up to you guys. So, as part of the TRIO program, it's called Upward Bound. You might have heard of the ETS, or the Educational Talent Search. A lot of schools around the state do that, and they partner with a local university. So this program would meet with, we would have about 10 to 20 students involved, and then they'd all be either identified as low income, first generation college bound, but with showing promise of a higher education. So it really just provides them the mentorship and one-on-one help along the way. So they meet every other week one-on-one with one of the advisors from the TRIO program. They also have weekend academy opportunities for tutoring and for just other kinds of college application help, college search, that kind of thing. And then they have a summer program, and then the summer after their senior year, there's a bridge program to help them transition into college. So they have 2 faculty that are paid for by the grant. They're through Plymouth State, so they're kind of vetted on that end of things. We obviously do all our procedures here as well. They would be working one-on-one with our students, and it would be intensive services, which is great. But also we have to, on the last page, the second to last slide, kind of shows what they're asking from us, just to help promote the program, to sort of help target some students that might benefit from the program, to provide a space to meet for those one-on-one meetings, as well as for after-school tutoring. Other than that, they do their academy and their summer program on campus at PSU, so that wouldn't be on our campus. And then just a lot of nuts and bolts needs as well. So are there any questions? I just kind of wanted to breeze through it. But.
Phil?
Yeah. On that next last page, speaks to a residential experience.
Yeah, so that's their summer program. So they actually live on the college campus. It's sort of, if you've heard of like the St. Paul's program, it's sort of a version of that where they get sort of the college experience and they get intensive help on their college application process and their college writing skills and that kind of thing.
Would the school district require these folks to be fingerprinted from the records check?
I'm assuming so. I think anyone in our building would require that. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you,
It's a
Jeff.
great opportunity.
Yeah, it is. It's been very successful in some other schools.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
I do need a motion
Okay, yes, that's what
to
I
move
thought.
forward
Okay.
to,
a
so
motion
Jeff can move forward.
coming from-
Make a motion.
Great, to promote the TRIO Upward Bound Partnership
Correct.
arrangement. All
Thank
those in
you.
favor?
I'll second.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Maureen, yeah, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
My last piece, Madam
Thanks.
Chair, is a presentation from Tennille and Sean O'Brien, who's responsible for our WILD program, which has been extremely successful. They want to present a job description to this program. I do want to add, it's been most helpful for us, especially with students at risk. We've been able to use that as an alternative to out-of-school suspension, and sometimes on Friday nights, and kudos to Sean and the staff from the program. So they have a brief presentation of a job description as we move forward. I can't emphasize enough how successful this program has been in regards with discipline and having a program other than, sending kids home, or keeping them, giving them something that's worthwhile as they repay whatever consequences they committed here at the school. Tennille?
Sure. So, as Mr. Parsons has outlined, there has been an increased need. We've had the privilege of having WILD in our building for a few years at no cost to us, no cost to the school district, which is wonderful. And in moving forward, we're noticing that because we have this increased need of students who are interested in the program, and in addition to those who we would recommend for the program, we would refer, that we're getting some self-referrals now too, which is wonderful. And because of that, the need and the ability to provide programming every day would be critical. So with grant funding, we have the ability to do just that, which is to provide WILD programming on both the A and B day rotating schedule here at the high school, and at the other time the person who is providing this service would be half days in this building in one of our learning centers giving us that additional vehicle support for typically either small group or individual service.
This is our third year running the WILD program here. It started off as just an alternative to suspension, but it's become a full class here, third and fourth block, that we do on A days. We had a capacity of 8 students, but we have 9 enrolled this semester, and we have 24 students interested next semester. That's why we're offering a second day, so we'll bring our capacity up to 16 students, so we'll whittle it down to that. And like Mr. Parsons said, we're offering an alternative to suspension program, so a student gets in trouble at school for doing something, instead of sending them home, we have them out with our staff for WILD. And we're also doing it on Friday after school detention. Started off probably a month ago or 2 months ago doing that. It's been every Friday that we've had at least one student that's come out to do that. The funding for WILD comes through my other job as the CEO of Adapt Adolescent Drug and Alcohol Prevention Tools. So this is our 6th year of funding, and probably our final year of funding for that program, which is one of the reasons why we're here asking for some grant funding through the school to sustain that program.
Any questions?
Yes, questions. Bill?
So you're asking for funding, is that correct?
We have it through.
Yeah, I thought you just said
It's through the grant.
because it's the last year.
We will be looking at next year, Phil. I may be coming to you next year with the budget. But we're all set for this year for the
I
grant.
understood that
Yeah.
when you made the comment.
No, but we may not get that grant next year.
Well, any other questions? Yes, Bernie?
So the position start date, is this something that's already, it says January 3rd, 2021. Has this already started?
I'm sorry, that should be 2022, that's my error.
They pick things up like that.
That's fine. If I didn't put a comma or a period in, that's that too.
So I have a question. This full-time person that you are looking for has not been filled to date, right?
Correct.
Okay. And they're starting on January 3rd if we find somebody.
That would be our hope.
And that's to satisfy that second day that you need, that kind of every day instead of every other day that you had.
And currently, right now, we have a paraprofessional who we pull from special ed who goes out. So this would eliminate the pull from that person, from that department, to be able to have this person go both days.
And currently, the grant would fund that position, and that's what you're telling me. Okay.
Correct.
And this is
So we're
more
looking for
informational.
approval to move forward with the posting, even though it is grant funding.
I see.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Yes,
Is
Bernie?
this something that we'll see in the budget for next year?
You could.
So you could, we're going to see what additional funds we can get for grants, whether it's through ESSER or entitlement grant. Otherwise, we may move forward, just given the expansion of it, and then they can earn credit for it as well. So it has become very successful.
Right now, we have a full-time employee through my organization that works for the district entirely. So the district does not fund her, but she provides programming for Canton, Thornton, Plymouth, and Rumney. Those 4 schools, in addition to being here at Plymouth Regional High School to facilitate the WILD program.
Great, okay. Fabulous, so I guess we just need, I'm gonna want to make a motion to approve the advertisement of this position, grant funded,
I'll make that motion.
seconded by, see, all those in favor?
Thanks, guys.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, great, thank you, very exciting. Appreciate it. You're all
That's
set.
my report, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to discussion items, budget draft review 2.
I'm not going to go line by line tonight, but I just wanted to give you an update with the changes. and I'll just reference them. So this is budget draft 2. You accepted 2 retirements at the last meeting, so there's a staff exchange for a middle of the road, not at the level that the previous teachers were at, so we brought that down a little bit. That would be reflected in the 1100 account under salaries. And then the other piece that was edited was the page 16, which was the psych services. There was just a typo. That reflects the current salaries. That again is on page 16 under psych services. And the last...
What line was that one?
Sorry. It's page 16.
Psychological salaries, the top.
That's the one that was high and...
It was really low.
Oh, really low,
So,
that's right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was missing a digit.
Okay.
So we added the
I
digit.
saw you pick that up.
So line 573.
Okay, Lynn. Thank you.
And then the last adjustment was under the buildings and grounds, so the old Parks and Rec, and that is on page 23. And then do you want to go over that change real quick?
Yeah, that was definitely a misprint on the supplies, as you can see. So again, that was a typo on my fault. But
It's just-
What line are you on?
the supplies for,
834.
thank you. That covers all the supplies, obviously, for all the buildings and grounds that support the outside services of this high school.
So the figures we're looking at in that line...
It's correct.
...are correct.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And that's the same situation with the other 2 referenced?
Yes, yep.
So given those changes, on page 25 is the appropriations increase, which is 3.11% at this point, just on the appropriation side. Are there any questions from the last read as far as any additional shifts or changes or direction as far as moving on towards the next meeting? I have Dan here tonight to first go over the revenue piece, so I can have him talk through that first if you'd like, and some options for the board to consider moving forward with to offset some of the revenue costs. And then we can go back to appropriations if you want us to shift anything there, okay? Any questions?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I have one question. Just as I'm looking at transportation, student transportation services, line 842, with the buses and the lack of bus drivers, the issue they're having keeping enough bus drivers in service, does that change what we end up owing at all? I mean, I know we are under contract, but if they're not able to keep up their part of the contract, is there...
We are compensated for that. So Dan works
Okay.
directly with the bus company, whether it be for regular transportation, if they're doubling up routes, or if they can't fill, usually it's at the athletic routes or the activities. They work directly with Dan, and we do get compensated for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? So, the last page of the budget package we have is the revenue page. The first column is the revenues that were projected. It's a combination of the revenues that were projected prior year at this time, and then they're updated on September 1st prior to tax bill being calculated this fall. The right column is what we have so far. And I know the first thing that people are going to notice is the zero unreserved fund balance, which is a significant contributor to the bottom line being increased over the current year. That was prior year's retained fund balance that was contributed, or committed, I should say, by the board during the budget season to this fall's revenue. That is one of the options that you have at your disposal. The fund balance that was retained at the end of the prior fiscal year was $260,136. You could easily vote to commit that retained fund balance from last year to the fund balance at the end of the current year, and that thereby putting that number in the revenue column. Another option that we could talk about in terms of new revenue streams Similar to last year, Health Trust, which is your health insurance plan provider, declared a surplus based on their prior fiscal year end. This happened last year as well. But the amount that is going to be, has been returned, I should say, because the checks have already been cashed. The amount that has been returned to the Penny-Baker District, and this is the employer portion, because we also give the employees their pro rata share of what they contributed to health insurance premiums. But the employer's share of this year's Health Trust return for the Penny-Baker District is $151,000. So that as well could be committed towards fund balance to reduce taxation next fall. Moving through the rest of the lines on the revenue sheet, catastrophic aid is a fairly standard calculation based on certain individual education programs, and they're costing above the state cap. Equitable aid is up this year. That's a state education program calculated on a per student basis, which we can talk in more detail about if you'd like.
That's their adequacy.
Pardon me?
That's their adequacy.
Yeah, state adequacy. Did I not say that clearly? I'm sorry.
Well, it's equitable aid. I think they're used to adequacy, so that's your adequacy aid.
Adequacy aid, sorry. So that's up about $186,000. We've got some tuition that comes in through the vocational program for newfound students attending vocational programs here. Restricted thermal recs, this is your revenue that you receive from the local utility because you're generating power and heat for this building with a renewable resource, your wood chip plant. Medicaid is up a little bit. We've seen through the efforts of Kim DeSalvo and her team, we've seen greater collections on the Medicaid reimbursement for services provided to those eligible students. Moving on to local revenue. We've got, this is based on a per student, students coming from towns that are not members of the Penny-Baker District, for example, Waterloo Valley or Ellsworth, or we do have some students who tuition in from Warren. Earnings on investments, and fairly small numbers. Co-curricular, this is an amount that's paid to the school district from the local student activities account, gate receipts, things like that. Moving down, one of the large changes that we have this year is the IDEA grant. Up until this current year, the IDEA grant was consolidated. All the districts into one grant that came through the SAU. And the state has eliminated that practice, or opportunity, I should say. And so the IDEA grant is providing greater direct expenses to each district, greater support, greater number of expenses, but there will be fewer expenses that all the districts benefit from run through it through the SAU. That's a clear way of putting it. We're projecting similar numbers for Title I and the other federal grants, as well as the hot lunch program, meal program, breakfast, etc., remaining a constant break-even program. So, if that's the current projection, we can make some adjustments as with some of the numbers I talked about earlier. But right now, that would leave a net district assessment of the current version of the proposed budget totaling at $830,180. And that be combined between state and local tax education. Any questions?
Could you tell me what the current tuition is for those who come from other
I sure can.
locations?
So this district charges each year the amount equal to prior year's cost per student as defined by the state formula. So that number this year is $20,419.
And do you have a cost per student in the state, how they figure what that cost is?
I could certainly, that data is available on the DOE website. I'd be happy to bring it up for you. But I don't know off the top of my head if they have it for state. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that sometimes is a difficult conversation about that number is that number that includes schools that have 1,000, 2,000 students in the cities that have maybe 10,000 students in 6 schools versus each district having its own setup. But I can certainly pull up that information for you.
Sam, you?
Yeah, so Dan, so there's there's 260,000 roughly in the fund balance from last year that we could do something with, and there's also that $151,000 in the health trust surplus. What would be, I guess, what would be the reason not to apply this? I mean, what are the advantages, disadvantages? Do you have a recommendation on what you think we should do?
I don't have a recommendation. I'll be happy to talk. And so in terms of advantages, the clearest advantage that I can see is if you were to, let's just in round numbers, let's say $400,000.
Yep.
Which would be a little less than those two numbers combined. If the board were to vote to commit an unreserved fund balance at the end of the current year of $400,000, it would significantly reduce by about 65% the current increase projected in local assessment. Like right now, this budget projects about a $600,000 increase in local assessment on the taxes of the 7 towns that are members of this district. Any number that you commit to that top line is going to reduce that number. So when one of the common sheets that we share that you have out at your district hearings and district meetings is the estimated assessment by town. And so that would just reduce that. I think it would be for lack of a better word, a comfort factor, if you will, for people looking at the budget and what's going to do to taxes when they're voting up or down, coming to a first deliberative session, contemplating what their vote's going to be.
Yep. And I guess could I have to follow up on that?
Sure.
So what does that do for us for the year after? In other words, I know when we do the budget in Horace as a select board member, part of the goal is to go like this. Right? So you don't get up, down, up, down, up, down on people's tax bills, which is something that's difficult to plan for. So if we were to do that, are we putting ourselves in a bad spot in the future year potentially, or should we hedge?
Well, I think there's always there could be opportunity in the current year to have additional funds available depending on how the year plays out.
Yeah.
And, we'll have that conversation as we usually do in May into June about what's left and do we want to retain additional funds. I think it could be. I don't want to say certain, but this increased adequacy number that you have on your budget in front of you, that's the second year of a 2-year state budget that included some hold harmless provisions because of the reduction in the state property tax. I honestly, my best estimate is that adequacy is going to fall off significantly after next year. When you talk about, when we're here a year from now, the 23-24 budget, I think the adequacy number is going to be lower. I might be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not at the State House. But, so you may want to hedge that bet.
Hold back a little bit.
Some. And when it comes to the spring, I'll be able to more clearly tell you what we're looking like at the end of the current fiscal year. You may want to add to that number. You would have the option to add to that number or hold back some more or less. You make a tighter decision, but at this point in the process, it's tough for me to estimate where you are in the current fiscal year.
Yeah.
So typically, in the past few years, can you remind the board what they've done?
The last 2 years, as in the current year, meaning the current tax bills that came out this fall, they were based partially on the year that ended June 30th, 2021, you did commit that $292,000. And the year prior, I believe the number was closer to $172,000 from the FY20 fund balance that was used as a revenue in the the tax bills that came out in the fall of 2020. So prior to that, the retained fund balance hadn't been committed in advance to the revenue sheet during the budget season. It's only these last 2 years that prior year's fund balance was committed during the budget season. There have been, in each year, there has been a significant unreserved fund balance, especially at the end of 2020. The number was closer to $600,000 total because of the savings that occurred because the school was shut down for the last approximately 80 to 90 school days. And there was some savings there.
And that was our reason, as I remember.
That's why it was so big, yes.
So
Tim, go ahead, why don't we finish, do you want to finish your thought and then?
So, I mean, we could split this 50/50, and we have 211, that's what I was thinking, to be help reduce the taxes and still have 200,000 left over for some issue later down the road. Instead of giving all of that.
Yep.
I mean, we gave it all that, but I remember we had the 600,000, because it was such a big number.
Right.
I don't think we gave it all, I think we did some kind
Yeah.
of.
You retained some, and that rolled into the following year.
Right.
And similarly, you retained some last year, moved into this year as a tool. Like I said, so you have, so the two big numbers that you have really to manage, if you will, at this point, are the 151,000 from Health Trust and the 260,000 that was retained from the prior year. And any combination of those numbers could be, at this point, committed to fund balance next year at a minimum.
So the 151 really is savings on expenses that we've spent in previous years, and we've done well through the healthcare program.
Yeah, it
Plus
was
plans.
it would be classified as a return of prior year expenditure.
Phil?
And I thought I showed, if the numbers sit right now, 4.7% increase in assessment. Is that close?
Yeah.
To me, that's, I think I'm going along with Tim. That seems high, especially given what tax rates are. I would be more inclined to, based on some of the feedback I'm receiving from the community, to do something to minimize the impact on assessment.
So if it would be helpful, and I don't mean to, if it would be helpful, I do have a sheet prepared that would show as the current version of the draft budget. But I know that you're talking about some additional changes possibly tonight, whether it be revenues or expenses, but I can show you what the current version of the core budget, the operating budget only, no additional warrant articles, would do to the tax rate of each of the 7 member towns based on this year's tax rate versus what it will be next year with just the operating budget. If that's something you want. I don't want to overload it with information. I can come back to you next meeting if you'd rather see it more refined with the changes you're contemplating.
I think it might be more accurate once the decisions are made. Typically at this meeting, as I look back in the records, this is when the decision is made of what you want to commit to that revenue side. And then we do the revised last budget right before the hearing at the next meeting for appropriations. Is that okay? Unless you want that sheet now.
Sam?
I think Tim's suggestion is a good one, actually. It's kind of hedging, you know, it's half and half, committing some to help reduce the rate, which is, but saving some back, you know, just to be safe.
Other thoughts, Barbara?
Yeah, I like that suggestion as well, and I would be in favor of that. But I want to be clear. If we said, let's say we're dealing with 411,000 right now, and if we made a decision to, let's say, use 211 of that, would that impact what everybody just received for tax bills, or the next one coming out?
It would be
Next
next one. These tax rates are set.
Your taxes aren't going down.
I want everybody out there to understand what's going on.
But we can slow them down.
Bernie, did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah, so, just so I'm clear, if we put whatever, 211, approximately half of this, we still can add more to that at the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not set in stone, so if we have it available, we can reduce that further. The second part of my question is, are we expecting, or do we know if there's going to be any federal aid coming in because of COVID, or if there's any, are we expecting anything that would help reduce? There's nothing that's...
To my knowledge, all those programs which are already allocated are all on supplemental expenditures which are not contemplated in this budget. There's nothing that's going to be used to reduce the tax rate or anything like that.
Phil?
Tim, could you tell us if, or for another meeting, if we adopted Tim's thought, what would that bring the assessment increase, is it possible to get it closer to 3?
Yeah, so I can do that, yes, for you. To answer your question, you know, if you wanted me to run numbers on the fly, I can. I can't get off the top of my head, but certainly if you wanted to know what, you know, once you select a number, let's say it's number 200, 211,000, whatever the number is, I can tell you what that's going to change in the net assessment on a whole, for the district as a whole. Obviously, it changes by town.
Yes, Sam?
Yeah, and just to take off on that point, when we talk about general assessment increase of the 3% or 4%, it affects every town dramatically differently. So we're talking about a district-wide, but it's based on the complicated formula of the half ADM and the half. And so just so everyone understands, particularly at home, 3% doesn't mean 3% for everybody. 3% shakes through the formula, and some towns can go up and some towns can go down, depending on factors like student enrollment, property values, right, etc. So it's much more complicated for that. It's actually difficult to predict what's going to happen in any given year based on it. So while 3%, you know, it just doesn't work that way when it goes through the formula.
For example, if I may,
Go ahead.
the holdings tax rate, the school portion went from 380 roughly, I think, to 610. So that was a significant increase. So I know it's different, but I'm just thinking, we even had a goal, I believe, to look at our budget with a 3% increase, and I believe that probably on the appropriation side. But if we could kind of keep that to the assessment side also, it is in my mind, it's a better selling point than 4.7.
And I don't disagree. I just want people to understand that it's just not that clear when it runs through the formula. Because I get that question in the community sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. When we look at the budget, it's looking like a pretty tight budget. Is there anywhere that can be tightened up at all? Have you gone through that to see if there's anything that, I mean, I'm not seeing a whole lot, but did you, I missed the last budget meeting, I'm sorry.
We fine-tuned it.
Okay.
We fine-tuned it, and it's based on the numbers of the kids that are coming in, based on, the reports from the other schools on my special ed area, so it's fine-tuned.
Yes,
So we're just doing this estimate of the revenues.
Correct.
We still are not going to vote on the third, what do we have, another revenue coming up?
No, this is the one you have that you need
But you
to,
have one more opportunity to vote on it prior to the hearing.
Right.
So you don't have to vote on the appropriation side tonight.
Right, so that would give Dan time to come back to us with the question that Phil had asked about what's the effect, to see how close we can get to that 3%
I think.
overall, right?
So you're thinking to commit some of that tonight to see what budget 3 would look, the draft 3 would look
I would
like?
like to see that.
And then you can make some final decisions at the next meeting in a couple of weeks.
Right.
With the
I mean,
211.
We can revisit, do we want to give some more of this, or do we want to go back to Bruce and the administration, as we've done before, and said, okay, we're at 3.2.
no, you give me a number and you tell me to go find it,
It's
right?
below the 3%, and Bruce is, and they've always come through for us on that stuff. But it sounds like he's done his homework, so.
And it sounds like the piece that you're looking at is 211,000 to start as a starting point.
I think that's a good spot.
Okay.
You know, I'll make that motion. We want to go ahead.
That would be great. You can
I'll
always-
second that.
okay. All those in favor, oh, wait a minute, discussion, sorry.
I'm sorry, we come up, if I'm correct, with a total of 411,136, is that right?
Well, let me give you the exact, I said 151 from Health Trust as a rounded number. I can give you the exact number if you'd like it, Barbara.
Please.
employer's portion of the health trust return for Pemmy Baker District, $151,104. So that 151,104 plus.
I'll bet my, no.
I'm fine, we don't have to tweak my number, because we're gonna have,
Well, do you just want to save 200,000 and to both, is that what you're saying?
that sounds good.
To allocate 211, whatever, and save 200?
Yeah, that's what I,
That's the motion on the floor?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Save 200.
That's
Yeah.
the motion.
Save 200.
Retain 200.
Okay. Any other discussion? So the motion on the floor made by Tim, seconded by Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Great. Okay. Thanks, Dan.
yeah, thanks.
But we will still have the projections that'll come to us for the next meeting, so we can see how close we are.
That was what, yeah, we just asked
For
for.
draft 3.
Yep.
Right.
Last chance. Okay, COVID update?
I don't have much of an update. I mean, if you have any questions for me, absolutely. I have no recommendations at this point. We have sporadic cases we're looking at about 10 days after Thanksgiving break at this point. We have a handful of cases at the high school. It kind of just keeps rolling. I mean, there's news with another variant coming in, but we're just moving like we have been. So unless I don't have much of a.
Tim, you have a question?
No, just a point, I've been kind of watching it, and it seems like it's slowed down a little bit. We're not seeing that exponential increase like.
So it's interesting. Many of the school districts across the state are seeing outbreaks and clusters
Right.
right before Thanksgiving and right after. We have not seen any. I don't know for what reason. So we just keep going. But we would shift based on your last vote to do a mask mandate if there was a cluster or an outbreak, unless you would change that. So we haven't had to shift to that yet.
And the new schedule has worked out extremely well, adding that extra lunch and getting out of 2:05. So I commend the staff and the students for, the numbers have really helped.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so moving on to the budget hearing and deliberative session dates.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you your dates real quick. And typically, we have a board meeting for either 45 minutes or a half an hour before each of those meetings, so the hearing and then the deliberative. So I have Tuesday, January 4th for the budget hearing at 6:30, so a meeting at 6. Does that work for everyone?
Sounds good.
And then the deliberative session is Tuesday, February 8th at 6:30, again, board meeting at 6.
What was that, February?
February 8th, both Tuesdays.
Will you have the second meeting in January? Sometimes we don't have that, Kyla. What's your thoughts about that?
I think I'll be able to answer that a little bit better as we get closer. I think we could do most of our business during those meetings, and then we can look to see if we need anything else.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
And that's it on that. Next meeting, we're going to have a full board meeting on December 21st instead of a committee meeting, and at that meeting, I was hoping to have the approved budget, and then the next meeting would be, after that would be the hearing.
Okay, great. Board member concern?
Oh, I just have the two other things under other, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Oh, that's right. Driver's ed contract.
Sure.
So, Dan, I'm going to have you just speak to this real quick. We're just up for our renewal for our driver's ed contract.
Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
It's not a real.
Sorry.
Sorry, I apologize. So the owner of the driver's ed school, Red Hill, has come and asked for a fuel surcharge, which the contract does provide for. And what she's asked is that, given the high prices that have been incurred so far this year, or continue to be incurred for fuel, she could add a $25 per student surcharge until gas prices come back down, assuming they do come back down. She, this is a program that is entirely funded by the students who take the course. The school district doesn't pay anything for it, but is the oversight authority on the contract. And I told her I would bring her request to you as the board and get your thoughts.
And I will tell you, she's an excellent, does an excellent job with our kids. No complaints.
So we're talking $680 a one-time rate, Dan?
Yes, for the kids.
Okay, the students. Any
I'm
questions
sorry.
about that?
Currently, right? Yeah, it's currently 680.
Currently $680 plus the surcharge.
Yes, so it would go to 705 temporarily, but it would be clearly, I think she would clearly spell it out. The 680 is the standard cost, the 25 is the temporary fuel.
And
fuel
she'll
surcharge.
pass the 25 on to the students or to us?
Well, the students pay her directly.
Okay.
The money doesn't come through the school district at all.
So the
No.
question really here is, she's going to raise her rates.
She's not going to raise her rates, she's just adding a fuel surcharge until
Okay.
prices come back down.
Yeah, okay, so just an...
The current contract goes through the 2024 school year.
Okay.
And this is just informative for us.
No, I'm asking for your authority. She needs your authority to move forward with the fuel surcharge.
Bernie?
You approve it.
Is there a specific number for the fuel costs, like, gas drops to $2.70 a gallon, or?
I haven't moved to that level of detail.
Any other questions?
I have a little bit of a hard time with it just because the price is so high anyway for families who are trying to do this. Some families choose to not have their kids in priority because it's so high. It might be tough for some families to add that, but if she's going to do it anyway, I don't know if there's a whole lot. I don't know, is this contingent, is her contract contingent upon us approving this, or?
She's the only one, she's also the only one that applied. And we did this.
She has the contract?
Yeah, her current contract goes through 2024. I'm not a lawyer, but the language in the contract is interesting. The increases will be approved by the board. Doesn't say may be approved by the board, so I don't think we want to get into a pushing match.
Isn't it pretty similar, Dan, to the bus contract, that they have something in their language on gas?
They do.
Yep.
It hasn't been, the bus contract does have a
Right.
language for fuel.
But the school pays for that.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And it's adding a burden to individual parents, is what I'm saying.
Tim?
At the age of 18, it used to be you didn't need driver's ed.
Same, it's the same.
It's the same. So it's only 16 to 18 years old.
Correct.
That we're talking about students that want their
Driver's
driver's
license.
license.
And it's full, every semester it's full, you can't get a seat.
Yeah. I waited till I was 18
Yeah.
because I didn't want to spend the money.
And they also all have phones.
There is other, just an FYI, just as far as prices for other companies, in Laconia, there's one at $700 already. So some of the kids do go outside of our district too to do it, so that's...
Yeah, if they can't get a seat.
So it's within the range still.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay, approve the $25 fuel surcharge, seconded by Barbara. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you. And what was it was employee something? Sorry, I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Dan just review this with you real quick.
Okay, thank you.
One employee has requested that they be allowed to purchase at their own expense a vision healthcare program. So there's very limited vision benefit in the health insurance that employees have. There's a separate program that's available, Health Trust, you buy your health insurance from, has a program through Anthem. Delta Dental actually offers a vision program through Delta Dental. So I want to be really clear that the request was, I want to make sure I'm clear that the employee who came to me with the request is part of the bargaining unit, and they understand that it's outside the bargaining cycle, but they're not looking for a bargaining benefit. They're looking to fund it entirely with their own money. But you as the employer would still need to be the sponsor, if you will, as to establish, especially if they went to Delta Dental, as a new vendor, we come up with a form whereby the employee, like other employee deductions, the employee would have to authorize the deduction from their paycheck, and then the district would send the money into the vendor, whichever one was selected.
But those plans usually have a minimum that they require in order to offer that program.
Understood, and so I think that your authorizing it or not would be the first step.
Okay.
If you authorized it, then I would, on behalf, just as a sort of a service to the employees, go to the vendor on their behalf and say, what's it going to cost, what are your minimum enrollments, and I would put the burden on the employee. If they wanted to get some friends who they work with together, if they had to meet a certain number of employees, if they couldn't, they couldn't. But really, we're just looking for you to say yes or no for moving forward at the employee's expense.
I guess I have a question in my own mind. Why didn't this come up?
I was thinking the same thing.
That we just completed. Because I certainly can see this coming up once we offer it. They're going to want to have it. Just my 2 cents. But it's 4 years down the road if we go forward with the contract.
So I'll be clear that the employee was not part of the bargaining unit, that you just completed the negotiation. So just if it takes any of the animus out of the conversation.
I guess I just don't feel real comfortable that it's coming up when we spent so much time. I don't know, you two were on the team, so.
I guess if they weren't, if you're saying they weren't part of it, they wouldn't have been included
so it's
in
not
the discussions.
Okay.
They wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Probably. Okay. Is there any, but to take off on what Tim's saying, is there any downside?
Well, I don't want to characterize it as downside, but I can certainly understand what Tim's saying, that if once the benefit is in the door, so to speak, no matter who's funding it, I can honestly see it becoming a subject of negotiations. If someone, if one party or the other decides to bring it up, I think it'd be naive to think it won't at some point.
Right. Well, in people's interests. But this would be totally funded by the employee, so there's no cost to the district at all.
That is the current request of the employee, yes.
Do they need, for something like this, do you need the union to sign off on it?
That's an interesting legal question. I certainly could move forward in that, if that was, I'm not a lawyer, Sam.
No, I'm not. It wasn't meant to be a legal question, but we have the union sign off on one-offs all the time.
So
this
we
is
can-
a one-off.
I think it's a one-off. The one-offs that you're referring to that the union signs off on are subjects to collective bargaining. Let's say, for example, early retirement, right? That's already a bargain benefit, if you will.
Yep.
So I can understand why the board would have to sign off. I mean, you would have to sign off on a one-off. This is just a new expense for the employees to take shoulder on their own.
It's minimal expense too, because I have the program myself. It's $3.17 a month or something, so it's not an outrageous amount, but I guess it just bothers me a little bit.
Phil?
I'd have to ask, do we want to get into a practice of dealing with issues, what might be next? And can't people on their own, independently, just like you can get your own supplemental, can't they get that on the outside? Why would they need to go through a district?
I think it's a cost thing, because if you get into the group, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're doing.
I can speak with a fairly high level of certainty that they could not buy independently from Anthem. Because of the relationship that Health Trust has with Anthem for municipal employees. They may be able to purchase directly from Delta Dental Vision. I don't know the answer, but I can research it. I can research that question and come back to you. I'll be back.
We can
in 2
table
weeks.
it for right now.
We can
just to
table it
get
for
some
now, but back in
information.
2 weeks, I can have the answer then if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
That's all I have.
Oh, that's okay.
Yep.
Great, thanks. Board member concerns, Phil?
I'm not sure where we left it. I believe it was at the last meeting, we initiated a discussion around guidelines for public input.
Yep.
And is that going to come back?
It was going to come back at the next committee meeting,
Okay,
a sample policy.
okay, excellent. If I may, Lisa?
Yes.
One other concern, I would expect that many of you may be aware of this, but it so irritated me that I asked Kyle if I could bring it up. And that is, the Commissioner of Education, Department of Ed, has added to the state's website portal where people, I'll say parents, although I'm not specifically sure it's limited to parents, can anonymously submit to the Department of Education any alleged activity that would make them think that their student was being discriminated against or harassed. It's done anonymously, and my understanding is the Department of Education will investigate with a phone call or whatever type of outreach to the person, to the teacher or the administrator directly, would circumvent the superintendent's office, and if it wasn't a principal, would circumvent the principal. To me, that is a horrendous situation to place our teachers and educators in. If you've got a relatively new staff member doing a crackerjack job, and all of a sudden they get the phone call from the commissioner's office, an investigator, I don't think it's appropriate for that to be, and I know it is not, I know that it has met with resentment on a number of fronts. To compound that, there's an extremist group out there that has offered a $500 bonus. Bounty, I'm sorry, thank you, bounty for any situation that is founded. And again, the problem, one of the problems is that this is anonymous. So who knows? And I just feel that, one, this board ought to be aware of it, and I think we ought to take a position saying we denounce this activity, and it ought not be continuing. And maybe we need to contact, I think it rests at this point, I mean, the commissioner's already taken his position on it and is doing it. I think you need to go to his boss, who would be the governor. And I just wanted to know if there was any desire to discuss this issue and/or take any action. I think it's grossly in error.
Bernie?
I believe that was passed by the state legislature. I think it's beyond that. That was a law passed by the New Hampshire state legislature.
But to specifically
That was part
have
of the
the
law.
portal,
That was part of the law.
Yeah,
Yes, Tim?
I could. I saw something on TV where the discussion was being had, that they haven't quite figured out the issues you've talked about.
yeah.
So it's gone before that committee, but now they're still trying to figure out how are they going to handle that situation. And I thought they did say something about communication with the schools too.
I haven't.
So just to clarify a
I
little
haven't
bit.
gotten there all yet.
It's not, so the investigation is not, from my understanding, not done at the Department of Education. It's done by the New Hampshire Commission on Human Rights. They're the ones who that would investigate it. The superintendent's office or principal may or may not be notified. It may go directly to the teacher. So typically, if there's a complaint, there's a chain of command. It goes to Bruce. It's not resolved there, it goes to the superintendent's office. It's just an opportunity to kind of bypass that and go right, which does tie in with with, consequences.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's not his office or the Department of Education gets involved. It's
Right. the New Hampshire Commission on Human Rights,
Right.
yeah.
And that's actually, I think, who helped draft the legislation. So,
Well, it might make sense to follow it, keep,
be good to find out.
yeah. Phil?
Yeah, the project was spearheaded following the passing of HB2. So that's the right to freedom from discrimination in public workplaces and education. And I think
Right,
this
right,
is
that's
just an
right.
interpretation of it at the Department of Ed level.
So the portal was based on the Department of Ed's interpretation of the law.
So they said in partnership, that I'm reading right from the Department of Ed web page, that they added the portal in response to that.
I didn't catch the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know at all. I mean, it was,
And it seemed like to me it was still kind of open. They were trying to figure some issues out, so.
We've not seen any issues with it yet, but I don't know.
And I've addressed it with the staff.
Christie?
Yes.
So from your perspective, if a teacher gets that phone call, have they been guided? Okay, that's what I was wondering.
We have,
because,
both
like,
Bruce and I met with...
legally, do they have to, like, be investigated by this other group? Like, what, it's a kind of a really, because you said there's no chain of command, when we only have that chain of command, so the logical consequences to come or outcomes. So.
Yeah, teachers were
Yeah.
definitely, nervous. It's almost like, I gotcha.
strange
So we met with union leadership to talk through and just to say, listen, we support our chain of command, and if you get a call and you're not comfortable, you always have a right to have someone else there to I would think.
Right.
I don't know what the whole process even looks like, and I think
Right.
that's what's unsettling. And then when a group had a bounty out on any teacher, that really did not go, that's not good, no.
Bernie?
My understanding also is that there are multiple bills being proposed for 2022 on both sides of the issue, but all kinds of things pertaining to education and what teachers can and cannot teach. So I think it would behoove all of us to keep a sharp.
Okay, Phil?
I guess my last comment would be that unless boards are aware of and are willing to take a position and give feedback, we deserve what we get. But I think we need to give this attention so that we don't get dealt a hand that is so difficult to deal with and going to negatively impact. It's hard enough to be in the classroom today. I mean, and add this layer, it's just not right.
Okay. I'm thinking maybe we could discuss what that looks like down the road, how we do handle that, but it sounds like something we need to revisit and circle around. Whether it's a letter that comes from me or on behalf of the board or something like that, I think that would be warranted.
If we do that, I think it's better to come from the board. My experience has been that politicians listen to board members more than they listen to some other people in the district.
All right. Okay. We can look at that. Thank you, Phil. Okay, so that's, any other board member concerns, questions, or anything? Okay, so I need a motion to go into non-public for the purpose of personnel.
So,
And for
contract.
Okay, contract and personnel. Made by Tim, seconded by Phil. Do roll call.